That woman can't even write Spanish properly. Michael Thompson laughed in front of all the executives, pointing at the poor employee. He had no idea that his laughter would cost him dearly. Michael Thompson was the kind of man who always got what he wanted. Tall, wearing expensive suits and a watch that cost more than a car. He ran Thompson Global Consulting from the 40th floor of a luxury building in Chicago. "Sarah, cancel my lunch with the Petersons. I need to close this deal with the Arabs by Friday," he shouted from his office overlooking Lake Michigan. His secretary, Sarah, rushed to answer him. Everyone ran when Michael spoke. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. Anything else?" "Have someone clean my desk properly. What's her name again?" Michael made a face of disgust. "Carmen, sir." "Oh, yes, Carmen. Make her clean it properly this time. I don't want to see even a speck of dust when the customers arrive." Michael lived in a mansion in Lake Forest, drove a red Ferrari, and treated everyone like his personal servants. To him, people like Carmen didn't even exist. They were like ghosts who cleaned and disappeared. "These people really don't understand anything," he would mutter whenever he saw Carmen passing by with the cleaning cart. "They come here and think they deserve something." Across town, in a small apartment in the Pilsen neighborhood, Carmen Rodriguez woke up every day at 4:30 a.m. "Mijos, despierten! Time to go to school," she called to her two children, Diego, 16, and Sofia, 14. Carmen was 48 years old, with black hair always tied back in a simple bun and hands calloused from so much work. Her brown eyes shone with intelligence, but few bothered to notice. "Mom, you don't have to wake up so early," Sofia said affectionately. "Yes, I do, love. I have to get there early to clean the offices before the important people arrive," Carmen replied with a sad smile. On the bus to work, Carmen read books in different languages. People thought it was strange that a janitor would read texts that looked like hieroglyphics. "What are you reading, Carmen?" asked Donna Rosa, her neighbor who also worked cleaning offices. "It's an old text, Rosa, from when I was a teacher in Colombia." "Ay, Niña, what is this for now?" Carmen sighed. "What for?" It had been 12 years since she'd arrived in the United States, fleeing violence. 12 years cleaning bathrooms for people who never looked her in the eye. The office was a palace of glass and marble, expensive paintings on the walls, Italian leather sofas, and a breathtaking view of Chicago. Every day, Carmen arrived at 6 a.m. When the building was still empty and quiet. She cleaned every desk, every window, every bathroom. When the executives arrived at 9 a.m., it was as if the cleaning had magically happened. "Good morning, Carmen," Sarah always greeted politely. "Good morning, Miss Sarah." Sarah was the only one who spoke to Carmen as if she were a real person. The others didn't even notice her when she passed by. "You watch that desk, Carmen," Michael said as she cleaned near him, as if she might break something precious. "And don't touch my papers." Carmen lowered her head and continued working in silence. She saw everything, heard everything, but to them she was invisible. During lunch, while the executives went to fancy restaurants, Carmen sat in the small employee kitchen eating her homemade sandwich. "These people have no idea what life teaches us," she thought, looking out the window at the expensive cars parked below. It was like this every day. Michael treated everyone as inferior, especially Carmen. And Carmen, invisible, cleaning and observing a world that pretended she didn't exist. It was a typical Monday when everything changed. Carmen was cleaning the windows in Michael's office when she heard the phone ringing insistently. "Thompson Global Consulting, this is Michael," he answered in his usual confident voice. On the other end of the line, Carmen could hear a nervous voice, speaking rapidly. Michael's face began to turn red. "What do you mean? It's arrived now!" Michael yelled, making Carmen jump in fright. Sarah ran into the room. "Mr. Thompson, is everything okay?" Mansouri's contract arrived. $80 million. Sarah, $80 million. Carmen stopped cleaning, She knew this was the most important contract in the company's history. Everyone had been talking about it for months. "But that's good, isn't it?" Sarah asked, confused. Michael ran his hand through his hair, messing up his perfect coiffure. "I wish I could read this damn thing." He picked up a thick envelope that had just arrived and opened it with trembling hands. He pulled out a stack of pages covered in strange symbols. "What language is that?" Sarah stepped closer, frowning. "I have no idea. It looks like hieroglyphics." Carmen, curious, took a discreet look. Her heart skipped a beat. Those letters. She knew those letters. "Call Johnson. Call Maria from translation. Call everyone." Michael was almost screaming. Sarah ran out and came back in 10 minutes with a pale face. "Mr. Thompson," she swallowed. "Johnson is in Europe until Thursday. Maria is in the hospital. The university's translation department said they have no one available. What about freelancers? Nobody works with that language. They don't even know what language it is." Michael sat in his chair and put his hands on his head. 24 hours, Sarah. I have 24 hours to sign this contract or we lose everything. All. Everything. Al-Mansouri is going to close with the competitors. I invested all our reserves in this project. If it doesn't work out... His voice trailed off. Carmen continued cleaning, but she was hanging on every word. She could see the desperation on Michael's face. For the first time, he looked human. "Mr. Thompson, are you sure you're not Arab or Turkish?" Sarah tried to help. "I've tried everything. I sent a photo to 5 different translators. None of them recognized it." The phone rang again. Michael answered hopefully. "Hello, oh, it's you, Peterson." His voice grew discouraged. "Yes, I know you were right. Yes, I know you said it was risky to bet everything on a culture I don't know." Carmen could hear a mocking voice on the other end of the line. "No, Peterson, I'm not giving up yet. I have until tomorrow morning." Michael hung up hard. Sarah returned to the room with more bad news. "Mr. Thompson, I tried the embassy, I tried the University of Chicago, I even tried Google Translate. Nothing." "Shit!" Michael kicked the trash can. "Shit!" Carmen had never seen her boss like this, always so arrogant, so full of himself. Now he looked like a lost boy. "What if we try to hire someone from outside the country?" Sarah suggested. "In 24 hours. Impossible. Besides, we don't have any more money for that. I spent everything on preparing this thing." Michael walked to the window and stared at the city below. 12 years building this company, Sarah. 12 years. "Mr. Thompson, my father was right. He said I was too ambitious. He said I would get hurt." Carmen felt a strange sensation in her chest. Was it pity? Pity for Michael Thompson? Sarah left the room, and Michael was left alone, holding the contract in his hands. Carmen saw him whisper, 80 million was supposed to be our salvation. He threw the papers on the table in dismay. "What devilish tongue is that?" Carmen looked again at the scattered pages. Yes, she was sure. It was Amharic, classical Amharic, no less. The language she had studied at university, the language of the ancient Ethiopian emperors. But how could she say anything? Who would believe that the invisible caretaker could read the rarest language in the world? Michael picked up the phone again. "Hello, Al-Mansouri?" "Yes, I received the contract." His voice was broken. "Yes, I know the deadline is tomorrow. Yes, I'll make it." When he hung up, he muttered, "How am I supposed to get a miracle in 24 hours? The next morning, the office was in chaos. Michael had called an emergency meeting of all executives. 15 hours, he shouted, banging his fist on the conference table. 15 hours left to save this company. Carmen was cleaning the water fountain outside the glass room, but she could hear everything perfectly. "Mr. Thompson, we've tried everything," said Robert, the vice president. "No university, no consulate, nothing." "Then try harder," Michael's neck veins were bulging. "Call NASA if you need to." Sarah rushed into the room. "Mr. Thompson, I just spoke to a professor at Harvard. He said it might be Amharic, but he's not sure." "Amharic?" Michael made a face of despair. "What the hell is Amharic?" "It's the language of Ethiopia, sir. Very ancient." "And where are we going to find someone who speaks that in this city?" David, the CFO, cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson, perhaps it's time to accept that—" "Accept what?" Michael exploded. "Damn, that I'm going to lose 80 million because I can't read some small print." Carmen continued cleaning, but her heart was racing. With each word, she felt a greater urge to go into that room and tell the truth. "You know what's funniest?" Michael gave a bitter laugh. "There are people in this building who can't even speak Spanish properly, let alone an African language." Carmen stopped cleaning. Her eyes filled with angry tears. "Who are you talking about, Michael?" asked Robert. "Oh, you know, how can I say, our cleaning lady. That Carmen." Everyone in the room laughed. Carmen felt her face heat up with embarrassment. "She can't even understand when I speak slowly in English," Michael continued, imitating an exaggerated accent. "Imagine if she understood Amharic." "Michael, you're terrible," Sarah laughed, shaking her head. Carmen swallowed her tears and continued cleaning, but her hands were shaking with indignation. "Guys, I'm going to be honest with you." Michael stood up and began pacing the room. "If we don't solve this today, we're going to have to lay off half the staff." Silence hung heavy in the room. "Half the world," David swallowed. "Half the world. We have no choice." It was then that Michael saw Carmen outside and had a cruel idea. "Hey, Carmen!" He knocked on the glass. "Carmen!" Carmen looked up, pretending she wasn't listening. "Come in here for a minute." Carmen swallowed hard and walked into the room. All the executives looked at her as if she were an animal in a zoo. "Carmen, you can read, right?" Michael asked with a mischievous smile. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. In Spanish, right, because you're not very good at English." Carmen lowered her eyes. "Sí, señor." "That's great. Look at this." Michael picked up the contract and showed it to her. "Can you read anything?" Carmen stared at the paper. Every letter, every word was familiar to her, but she shook her head. "No, señor, I don't understand." "Of course you don't understand," Michael laughed. "Guys, look at this. This is our language expert." Everyone laughed. Carmen felt her cheeks heat with embarrassment. "You know what's funny?" Michael was amused. "I'd bet my salary that even Carmen would be more helpful trying to translate this than some of you." More laughter. "Actually," Michael was excited now, "you know what I'm going to do? If Carmen can read a single word of this contract, I'll fire Robert and put her in his place as vice president." "Hey," Robert protested. "Seriously, not a single word that makes sense." Carmen felt her blood boil. They were playing with her like a clown. "So, Carmen, want to try?" Michael waved the paper in front of her face. "Go ahead, try. Win Robert's job." "Michael, stop it," Sarah said, but she was still laughing. "No, no, she can try. Come on, Carmen, surprise us." Carmen looked at all those smiling, superior faces. She looked at Michael with his cruel smile. She looked at the contract in his hand. For a moment, she imagined what would happen if she told the truth. If she translated the first line right then and there, the shock on their faces, the silence. But then she remembered her children, the rent she had to pay, her sick mother who depended on her. "No puedo, Señor Thompson," she whispered. "Of course you can't." Michael burst out laughing. "Neither did I expect it." Okay, enough playing around," Robert said. "Carmen, you can go. We have serious work to do." Carmen left the room on shaky legs. Outside, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. Tears streamed down her face. Inside the room, she could still hear the laughter. "That was good, Michael. Imagine if she could read Amharic. It would be the end of the world." Carmen wiped away her tears and returned to her work, but something in her chest had changed. The humiliation had been too much. She looked back at the conference room, where everyone was still desperately trying to solve a problem she could solve in 5 minutes. 15 hours. They had 15 hours to find a miracle. Carmen had returned to her work, but she couldn't concentrate. The laughter still echoed in her head. "This is our language expert." Michael's mocking voice wouldn't leave her ears. She was wiping down the hallway table when she saw through the glass window of the conference room. Michael had his head in his hands. Robert was talking on the phone, gesturing nervously. Sarah was typing frantically on her laptop. 10 hours. Carmen heard Michael murmur. 10 hours left. David rushed into the room. "Michael, I spoke to 3 other universities. Nothing. No one works with Old Amharic. What about that guy from New York? He said he won't arrive until Thursday. Too late." Carmen stopped cleaning. 10 hours. In 10 hours, these people would lose everything. And she could save them all. Guys, I have to be honest. Michael stood up. "If we can't make it by 6 o'clock, I'm calling Al-Mansouri and cancelling everything." "Michael, no!" Sarah despaired. "We have no choice, Sarah. I can't sign a contract without knowing what's in it." "What if there's a catch? A clause that hurts us?" "That's exactly why I can't risk it." Carmen looked at the contract spread out on the table. She knew exactly what was written there. And yes, there were dangerous clauses, very dangerous. Her children appeared in her mind. Diego, who dreamed of studying engineering. Sophia, who wanted to be a doctor. Her mother, who needed expensive medicine. And then she remembered the humiliation, the laughter, the contempt. She can't even speak Spanish properly. "This is our language expert. It would be the end of the world." Something inside Carmen broke. No, it didn't break. It strengthened. She dropped the cleaning cloth on the table. He took a deep breath, and he started walking towards the meeting room. Her legs were shaking, but she kept walking. She tapped lightly on the glass door. Michael looked at her irritably. "Carmen, now is not the time. We're busy." Carmen pushed the door open and entered. "Carmen, I told you." Michael started to speak, but she interrupted him. "Mr. Thompson," she said in a calm but firm voice. Everyone stopped talking and looked at her. "This contract has several problematic clauses." There was complete silence. Michael blinked several times, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What did you say?" Carmen pointed to the papers on the table. "A Sheikh Al-Mansouri is demanding 70% of the profits for the first 5 years, not the 30% you believe." Michael's mouth fell open. Robert dropped the phone. Sarah stopped breathing. You're reading this?" Michael stammered. "Yes, Senor Thompson, and there's more." Carmen picked up the first page of the contract. In Clause 12, he demands full control over marketing decisions. In Clause 15, you can't sell to any of his competitors for 10 years. David stood up slowly, as if he was seeing a ghost. This can't be true," he whispered. Carmen continued reading, translating each line perfectly. "And here, in Clause 23, if you don't meet his goals in the first year, he can cancel the contract and keep all your investments." "Stop!" Michael suddenly shouted. "Stop everything!" Everyone was silent. Michael looked at Carmen as if she were an alien. Are you reading in Amharic?" "Yes, sir." "As." Carmen took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. "I was a professor of linguistics at the National University of Columbia, specializing in ancient languages of Africa and the Middle East." Robert sat down heavily in his chair. "Teacher, I speak classical Amharic, Oromo, Tigrinya, ancient Arabic and Somali." Sarah covered her mouth with her hands. I've been working here as a janitor for 12 years because..." Carmen stopped, swallowing back tears. "Because it was the only job I could get when I arrived in the United States. Michael ran his hand over his face, as if waking from a dream. Do you know how to translate the entire contract? Every word, Senor Thompson. And you're saying it's a trap? Carmen nodded. And if you sign this as is, in 2 years the company will belong to Al-Mansouri. The silence in the room was deafening. Michael looked at the other executives. They were all in shock. He looked back at Carmen. Why didn't you speak up before? Carmen smiled, but it was a sad smile. When, Senor Thompson? Between a joke about me not knowing Spanish or when you bet I couldn't read a word? Michael looked down, embarrassed. Or maybe when you said that even I would be more useful cleaning bathrooms than helping with serious work. Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Carmen picked up another page of the contract. But I can help. I can translate everything and explain exactly where the problems are. Michael looked at her with a completely new expression, no longer one of superiority or disdain. It was respect. You would do that. After how we treated you? Carmen looked at all those faces, the same faces that had laughed at her an hour ago. Now they all looked at her as if she were the most important person in the world. Yes, Senor Thompson, I would do that. Michael was still trying to process what had happened. Carmen, the janitor he had humiliated minutes earlier, was standing in front of him, saving his company. Carmen, he said slowly, as if testing the name for the first time. Tell me your story. Carmen looked at every face in the room. For the first time in 12 years, they were actually looking at her, not through her, not over her, at her. She pulled up a chair and sat down. Her hands were shaking a little. I was born in Medellin, Colombia, she began quietly. My father was an archaeologist, my mother a history teacher. From a young age, I saw books in strange languages around the house. Sarah leaned forward. And you learned it this way? My father studied ancient civilizations. When I was 8, he showed me a manuscript in Amharic. He said it was the language of the kings of Ethiopia. Carmen smiled, remembering. I thought the letters were beautiful, like little drawings. Robert shook his head in disbelief. And you decided to learn? I was curious, very curious. At 15, I already spoke basic Amharic. At 20, I was at university studying linguistics. Michael sat in the chair next to her. Linguistics. Semitic linguistics. Ancient languages of Africa and the Middle East. Carmen spoke, her eyes shining. I was the youngest professor at the National University. I was 25. Wow, Sarah muttered. He spoke 7 languages. Classical Amharic, Tigrinya, Oromo, Somali, Ancient Arabic, Medieval Hebrew, and Aramaic. David swallowed. 7 ancient languages? I was a specialist in medieval manuscripts. International companies hired me to translate historical documents. I earned very well, had a beautiful house, a car. His voice dropped. It was a good life. Michael frowned. What happened? Carmen took a deep breath. Her eyes filled with tears. Violence arrived at the university. It was 2013. The paramilitaries were threatening professors who, according to them, influenced young people. Influenced how? Sarah asked. I taught about other cultures, other religions. To them, that was dangerous. Carmen wiped her eyes. I received the first threat in April. The silence in the room was heavy. They gave me 48 hours to leave the country, or I would die. My God, Robert whispered. My husband, Eduardo, was a journalist. He said he wouldn't run away, that we had to fight. Carmen stopped, swallowing back tears. 2 weeks later, they killed him. Michael covered his face with his hands. Eduardo was coming back from college. 3 men on a motorcycle. Carmen closed her eyes. My children saw everything. Sarah started to cry. Diego was 4. Sophia was 2. They didn't understand why Daddy wouldn't get up from the floor. Carmen paused to compose herself. Everyone in the room was completely silent. That night, I took my children and my mother, who was already sick, and fled. I brought a backpack with clothes and my diplomas. That was all I had. "And how did you get here?" Michael asked quietly. "Mexico first, then on foot across the border, 3 weeks walking in the desert with 2 small children and my mother." Carmen looked out the window. "We almost died of thirst." "Carmen!" Sarah was crying openly. "When we arrived here, I had $50 in my pocket. I didn't speak English well. My Colombian diplomas were useless." Robert shook his head. "What about work?" "I tried tutoring, but no one would hire an undocumented refugee. I tried working as a freelance translator, but I needed American certifications that I didn't have." Carmen smiled sadly. "One day, I saw an ad for a janitor here at the company. No need to speak fluent English, it said. It was perfect for me." 12 years, Michael muttered. 12 years cleaning offices. 12 years of being invisible, Carmen corrected. "But my kids are grown. Diego is in engineering school. Sophia will graduate from high school this year." "How did you manage to pay for everything?" David asked. "I worked here during the day, cleaned houses at night. On weekends, I cared for the elderly." Carmen showed her calloused hands. "I never stopped studying. At the public library, I read everything about translation, modern linguistics, even new languages." Michael looked at his own hands, soft and well-groomed. "And your mother, Alzheimer's. He needs expensive medication, special care." Carmen sighed. "That's why I could never stop working. That's why I could never complain about anything. Nor the humiliations," Sarah said softly. Carmen looked at her. "You didn't know my story. To you, I was just the cleaning lady." Michael stood and walked to the window. When he turned around, his eyes were red. "Carmen, I have no words." "No need for words, Senor Thompson." "No, I do." Michael came back and sat across from her. "I spent 12 years working with one of the smartest women I've ever met, and I treated you like dirt." Carmen shook her head. "You didn't know." "That's no excuse. I never asked your last name. I never asked where you came from. I never treated you like a human being." Robert leaned forward. "Carmen, how many languages do you speak today?" 9. I learned Italian and French here in the United States." 9 languages, David repeated in disbelief. "And ancient manuscripts, commercial translation, cultural interpretation." Carmen enumerated. "I never stopped studying, even while cleaning toilets." Michael looked at the contract on the table. "And now you're going to save my company?" Carmen smiled. "Our contract has serious problems, Senor Thompson, but there is a solution." "He has?" "Yes. But first," Carmen looked at everyone, "first you need to know who I really am." Carmen had spent the last 2 hours translating the contract page by page. Michael and the executives listened intently to every word. But as she progressed, her expression grew increasingly worried. "Maid, page 15, she said, frowning. "Something strange here." "What is it?" Michael leaned forward. Carmen pointed to a paragraph written in smaller letters. "This part is in archaic Oromo, very old." "Oromo? Wasn't it all in Amharic?" Sarah asked. "Mostly, yes, but there are passages in other Ethiopian languages." Carmen pulled out another page. "Look here, this clause is in medieval Tigrinya." Robert stepped closer. Why would he mix languages?" Carmen continued reading, and her face turned pale. "Oh no." "What is it?" Michael asked, alarmed. Carmen placed her hand on her forehead. "This isn't a simple partnership agreement. Like this. It's a trap, a very well-planned trap." The silence in the room was tense. "Carmen, explain further," Michael said, his voice shaking. Carmen took the pages and spread them out on the table. "Look at this." On page 3, in Amharic, he offers a 30-70 share. It looks like you're getting 70%. Yes, that's what we understand. But on page 15, in archaic Oromo, it says the 70% is only for the first 6 months. After that, the split reverses to 20-80 in his favor. David swallowed. And isn't that in the English contract? It's not anywhere in the main contract, just in these hidden passages. Michael began to pace nervously around the room. What else? Carmen continued reading. On page 22, in medieval Tigrinya, there's a clause that says if you don't meet specific targets in the first 18 months, he automatically acquires 51% of the company's shares. What goals? Robert shouted. Impossible goals. He wants you to open offices in 15 different countries in a year, to hire 1,000 employees, to increase revenue by 500%. Sarah covered her mouth. That's impossible. Exactly. It's designed for you to fail. Michael stopped walking and looked at Carmen. What if we fail? Carmen turned to the last page and pointed to a paragraph in tiny print. Here, in an archaic Ethiopian dialect that not many Ethiopians can read, it says that if you don't meet your targets, he'll not only keep 51% of the company. Carmen stopped, took a deep breath. He gets everything, 100%. You lose the company completely and still owe him all the investments you made. The silence in the room was deathly. Thief! Michael exploded. Michael! Sarah tried to calm him down. No, Sarah, this guy planned to rob us from the beginning. Carmen nodded sadly. It was very well planned. He knew you wouldn't be able to find translators for those specific dialects. So he thought we'd sign without reading everything, Robert muttered. He bet on your greed and desperation. Michael slammed his fist on the table. And it almost worked. Suddenly, Sarah's phone rang. She quickly answered it. Sarah speaking. What? When? Okay, thanks. She hung up and looked at Michael in panic. It was Al Mansouri. He changed the meeting. He wants you to go to Dubai today. Today? Michael turned white. The flight leaves in 4 hours. If you're not there tomorrow morning to sign, he'll cancel everything and go with the competition. Carmen stood up quickly. This is part of his plan. Like this. He wants you to be under pressure, tired, confused. It's easier to deceive someone who is nervous and desperate. Michael ran a hand through his hair. But if we don't go, we'll lose the deal. And if we go, we lose the company, David added. Exactly, Carmen confirmed. It's checkmate. Sarah looked at her phone. Michael, there's one more thing. What now? He will only speak in Arabic and Amharic at the meeting. He said he doesn't trust foreign translators. Carmen and Michael looked at each other. Can you do that, Carmen? Michael asked. Can you represent me in a negotiation in Dubai? Carmen felt her heart race. I've never left the United States since I got here. But can you? Linguistically, yes. I master Ethiopian Arab cultural protocol. I know how they do business. Then it's decided, Michael said. We're going to Dubai. Michael, Robert interjected. Are you sure? It's a big risk. What's the alternative, Robert? Let him rob us. Carmen looked out the window, thinking, Senor Thompson, if we're going to face Al Mansouri, we need to have our own strategy. What kind of strategy? Carmen smiled for the first time since she had started reading the contract. He's not the only one who can play with ancient languages. Michael frowned. What do you mean? I can write counter-clauses in the same dialects he used, clauses that protect you. Is that possible? More than possible. It's fair. Sarah looked at her watch. Guys, if we're going to do this, we need to decide now. The flight leaves in 3.5 hours. Michael looked at Carmen. Carmen, would you be up for this? Coming to Dubai to represent me in an $80 million deal? Carmen thought about her children, her mother, about 12 years of being invisible. Yes, Senor Thompson. I'll take it. Even after everything we did to you. Carmen smiled. Especially for that. Michael held out his hand to her. Then we're partners in this. Carmen shook his hand. We're partners. The flight to Dubai was tense. Michael stared nervously out the small plane window. Carmen, beside him, was focused on reviewing her notes in Amharic and Arabic. Carmen, are you sure about this? Michael asked for the 10th time. I'm prepared, Senor Thompson, she replied calmly. Trust me. I trust. It's $80 million. Carmen looked at him. And 12 years of my life he can't take from us. When they landed in Dubai, a driver was waiting for them with a sign saying, Thompson Company. The car was a luxurious black limousine. Wow, Michael whispered. It's to impress, Carmen explained. It's part of their strategy. The Al Mansouri business complex was gigantic, golden glass towers, lush gardens, fountains everywhere. It was like a city within a city. This must be worth billions, Michael commented, impressed. And he wants our little company too, Carmen muttered. At reception, they were greeted by a tall man in an expensive suit. Mr. Thompson, welcome to Dubai, he said in Arabic-accented English. I am Rashid, Mr. Al Mansouri's assistant. Thank you, Michael replied. Rashid looked at Carmen curiously. And you are Carmen Rodriguez, linguistic consultant. Carmen replied in perfect, accent-free English. Rashid looked surprised, but smiled. Very well, please, follow me. They entered an elevator that went up to the top floor. The walls were marble with gold accents. Mr. Al Mansouri is very excited about this partnership, Rashid commented. Carmen and Michael exchanged a look. I bet he is, Michael thought. Mansouri's office was the size of an apartment. It featured expensive Persian rugs, carved wooden furniture, and an incredible view of Dubai. Khalid Al Mansouri stood near the window. He was a man in his 50s, with a neatly trimmed beard and traditional Arab clothing, but with a watch that cost more than a car. Mr. Thompson, he approached with open arms. Welcome, welcome. Michael shook his hand. Mr. Al Mansouri, nice to meet you. Al Mansouri looked at Carmen and frowned. And who is this lady? Before Michael could respond, Carmen stepped forward. Assalamu alaikum, As-Sayyid Al-Mansouri. Ana Carmen Rodriguez, Khabiratul Lughat, she said in fluent Arabic. Peace be with you, Mr. Al Mansouri. I am Carmen Rodriguez, language specialist. Al Mansouri stopped smiling. His eyes widened. Anti tatahaddathina al-Arabiyya? He asked, surprised. Aisha, do you speak Arabic? Naam, wa tahaddathu al-Amhariyya aydan. Carmen replied calmly. Yes, and I also speak Amharic. Al Mansouri exchanged a quick glance with Rashid. He clearly hadn't expected this. Very interesting, he murmured in English. Shall we sit? Michael suggested, trying to break the tension. They sat at a round table. Al Mansouri called two other men who were waiting in an adjacent room. These are my advisors, Ahmad and Hassan, he explained. Carmen greeted them both in Arabic, which left them visibly surprised. Now, Al Mansouri began, let's discuss the contract. He took the papers and began speaking rapidly in Arabic to his advisors, thinking that Carmen would not understand. هذه المرأة مشكلة. لم نتوقع مترجمة. This woman is a problem. We weren't expecting a translator. Carmen kept her expression neutral. But Michael could tell she was getting the point. Ahmad replied, ربما يجب أن نؤجل الاجتماع. Maybe we should postpone the meeting. Al-Mansouri shook his head. لا, سنمضي قدما. ربما لا تفهم الأمهرية القديمة. No, let's go ahead. Maybe she doesn't understand Old Amharic. Carmen smiled inwardly. They had no idea what was coming. Al-Mansouri turned to them and reverted to English. So, Mr. Thompson, are you ready to sign our partnership? Michael looked at Carmen. Oh, Carmen? Carmen leaned forward and said in classical Amharic, Nehena nataye we ilate nefalete wadataye manegadu. We know your true intentions, Mr. Al-Mansouri. Mansouri's face went white. Ahmad and Hassan looked at each other, shocked. Ezi koneterato nenesa kememeleana diu tawasadana? Is this contract a trap to rob us? Al-Mansuri swallowed hard. He clearly hadn't expected anyone to master classical Amharic to this level. Carmen continued, now alternating between Amharic and Arabic. في الصفحة 15 يوجد شرط في اللهجة الأورومية القديمة. On page 15, there is a clause in Old Oromo dialect. She took the papers and pointed exactly where it was written. هذا الشرط يقول أنك ستحصل على 80% بعد 6 أشهر، ليس 30. This clause says you'll get 80% after 6 months, not 30. Al-Mansuri tried to maintain his composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Carmen smiled. Mr. Al-Mansuri, I have a PhD in Semitic linguistics. I can read every single dialect you used in this contract. She got up and walked over to the whiteboard on the wall. She began writing in Old Amharic. This clause here, she pointed, says that if we don't open offices in 15 countries within 1 year, you get 100% of our company. Ahmad muttered something to Hassan in Arabic. كيف عرفت هذا? How did she know that? Carmen turned to them. لأنني أستطيع أن أقرأ كل ما كتبتموه, because I can read everything you wrote. Al-Mansuri stood up, irritated. This meeting is over. No, Carmen said firmly. This meeting is just beginning. She took out a folder she had brought and took out papers written in Amharic and Arabic. I prepared a counter-proposal in the same dialects you used. Al-Mansuri looked at the papers, and his face grew more and more surprised. How did you? 50-50 partnership, fair terms, no hidden clauses, not impossible goals. Carmen sat down calmly. What, you can accept this, or we leave and tell the business community in Dubai exactly what you tried to do. Hassan whispered to Al-Mansuri, هذه المرأة خطيرة. تعرف أكثر مما نعرف. This woman is dangerous. She knows more than we do. Al-Mansuri looked at Carmen with a completely new expression. It was no longer arrogance. It was respect. Mrs. Rodriguez, he said slowly. Where did you learn to negotiate like this? Carmen smiled. I learned from the best teachers in the world. Who? Life. And 12 years of being underestimated. Al-Mansuri laughed for the first time since the meeting began. You are impressive. Thank you. Now, do we have a deal? Al-Mansuri looked at his advisors, who nodded reluctantly. We have a deal. Michael, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally breathed a sigh of relief. Carmen had done the impossible. She not only saved the company, she earned the respect of one of the most powerful businessmen in the Middle East. 3 months after Dubai, Thompson Global Consulting was a completely different company. Carmen was in her new office on the 39th floor, yes, 1 floor below Michael, organizing documents for a video conference with clients from Germany. On the glass door, a gold plaque gleamed, Carmen Rodriguez, Vice President of International Relations. Mummy, I can't believe this is your office. Sophia, her 16-year-old daughter, was visiting the company for the first time. Carmen smiled, running her hand through her daughter's hair. Sometimes I don't believe it either, mi amor. And that view? You can see all of Chicago. It's the same view I used to clean when I was a janitor here. The difference is that now I can stop and admire it. Sarah knocked on the door. Carmen, sorry to interrupt. Michael wants to talk to you. Sure, I'll be right there. Carmen said goodbye to Sophia and went up to the 40th floor. Michael's office had also changed. Now it featured photos of employees of all nationalities and a world map with pins marking all the company's international projects. Carmen, come in, come in. Michael stood up when she arrived. How was the meeting with the Japanese? Tokyo contract, $15 million. Amazing! Michael clapped his hands. In 3 months, you've brought in more international clients than we've brought in the last 5 years. Carmen sat in the chair across from his desk. That's what happens when you truly understand people's culture, not just their language. Speaking of which, Michael pulled out a thick folder. I want to show you something. He opened the folder and showed graphs and numbers. Our revenue has increased 300% since you took over. We have contracts in 12 different countries. And you know what's best? What? 0 complaints. All clients love working with us now. Carmen shook her head in amazement. Who would have thought, right? Carmen, there's something I need to tell you. Michael looked serious. I got a call today. Good or bad? Good. Very good. Michael smiled. MIT called. Diego was accepted into the engineering program with a full scholarship. Carmen stopped breathing. What did you say? Full scholarship. Carmen. 4 years. All paid for. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. How? How did they know about Diego? Michael looked a little embarrassed. Well, I could have called them and told them about a promising young man, the son of one of the most brilliant executives I know. Michael. And I may have also donated to the scholarship program for children of immigrants. Carmen started crying. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. It's the least I can do after 12 years of treating you like trash. At that moment, Robert entered the room. Excuse me, but the letters arrived. What letters? Carmen asked, wiping away her tears. Robert smiled. The acceptance letters from the applicants for the new program. Michael stood up, excited. Carmen, I need to tell you about the company's most important project right now. What project? The Rodriguez program. Carmen's eyes widened. Rodriguez program. Yes, a program to identify and hire skilled immigrants who are working in roles below their qualifications. Robert spread the cards out on the table. We received 847 applications in 2 weeks. 847. Carmen could hardly believe it. Doctors working as Uber drivers, engineers cleaning buildings, lawyers serving food. Michael pointed to the letters. People like you, Carmen. Invisible because of prejudice. Carmen picked up some letters and began reading. Dr. Ahmed Hassan, a cardiologist from Egypt, works as a janitor. Maria Santos, a civil engineer from Peru, works as a nanny. We've already hired 15 people, Robert said proudly, and they're all doing fantastically well. Michael, this is... Carmen was at a loss for words. It's what should have been done a long time ago. Sarah entered the room, carrying a bottle of champagne. Sorry to interrupt, but the invitation arrived. What invitation? Carmen asked. Michael took an elegant envelope from Sarah. Carmen Rodriguez, you are invited to speak at the International Corporate Diversity Conference in London. I? You. The topic of your talk will be, from janitor to vice president, how companies waste talent due to prejudice. Carmen sat up, stunned. You're kidding me. No, we're not. Sarah laughed. You're going to speak to 500 CEOs of the largest companies in the world. Just then, Diego appeared in the office doorway. At 18, he looked just like his mother, only taller. Mom, Sarah told me about MIT. Carmen stood up and hugged her son, crying. Mijo, you're going to be an engineer. I'm going to be an engineer because of the most incredible mother in the world. Michael looked at the scene and felt a tightness in his chest. Carmen. She turned to him, still hugging Diego. Thanks. Thank you for what, Michael? For not giving up on us, for not abandoning us when you discovered who we really were. Carmen released Diego and walked over to Michael. But do you know why I didn't give up? Why? Because I believe that people can change, that everyone deserves a second chance. Michael held out his hand to her. Partners forever. Carmen shook his hand. Partners forever. Sarah uncorked the champagne. Cheers! Everyone raised their glasses. Carmen Rodriguez! Michael shouted. Second chances! Carmen replied. The family! Diego completed. They toasted, and Carmen looked out the window at the city of Chicago below. 12 years ago, she had arrived here with a backpack and $50. Today, she was a vice president at one of the city's most respected consulting firms. But the most important thing wasn't the title, the salary, or the office. What mattered most was that she had proven something to herself and to the world, that a person's value isn't in what they do, but in who they are. And Carmen Rodriguez, the invisible caretaker who spoke 9 languages, had become visible in the most powerful way possible by being valued for who she always was, an extraordinary woman